Uh-oh, we don't want to go that way. Oh boy, there's already people here. Hi guys. Alright, so let me see if I can set this up a bit differently. There we go. We're going to try to make the presentation legible, but I'm not going to be able to ask you guys or answer any questions today. So, hold on a minute. I'm still not quite set up with everything either. Cancel. I'm trying to get the TV set up. Alright, so can you see? No. Can you see it now? Probably not. Wish I had some help here. Somebody who's tech savvy. I am not. Alright, so we're here tonight talking about Mayapple. And, give me a second here. Alright, so there's that. Mayapple, American Mandrake. Alright, so I am not able to see the camera right now. Though I do believe they're legible today, right? Yep, sure are. Alright. Put a little bit of effort into this today. We're going to be talking about American Mandrake, Mayapple. It's a pretty incredible plant. Maybe we can work this out. If I had a longer HDMI cable. Excuse me, sorry. Allergies. How many do we have? We have 4. 1 like. Anybody sharing anything yet? I'm okay if you don't. I'm just asking. You guys are pretty awesome anyway. Don't forget to like the live. Yeah, don't forget to like the live. It doesn't let me like it. We got a few people. We're just waiting for some people. So if you guys want to fast forward ahead, I think we'll do a timestamp and we'll just kind of do some chit chat. I'll actually get into the presentation itself at the 5-minute mark. So we're at 3:10 right now. This will give us an idea to kind of chit chat a little bit and figure out what we're going to do today. Do you prefer? So I see we have all of our usuals, but ordinarily I don't ordinarily get a lot of views until later on. So tonight there's some pretty surprising things I think we're going to find out about this species. You guys are going to be really impressed. I put some effort into a lot of the research, and I think you're going to be pretty shocked at some of the outcomes and what you see. Excuse me. I'm going to try not to do this too much. My allergies a little bit. I didn't take any allergy drops earlier. So we were almost the 4-minute mark. Thing anybody wants me to touch on real quick? We have like a minute. Now, if you stay tuned towards about the middle of this presentation, so this is going to be projected to be about an hour long. If you want the PDF or if you want the PowerPoint presentation for this, it's available on my Patreon page, and I believe the link for it is down in the description. So feel free to go over there and you can download that PowerPoint and you can follow along with your own, or you can just follow along here. I'll try to cover as much as I can and be as thorough as possible, but I still kind of want to stay within that 1 hour time limit. This gets more people actually more willing to want to talk about it. We're down to about 15 seconds, and then we're going to get started. And I think maybe even you guys who've been following for a while, there's stuff that I'm going to touch on tonight that I haven't covered before. So I think when you see it, you're going to go, holy crap, that's pretty cool. I found some stuff that's pretty neat. So, and again, this particular PowerPoint presentation is available. It's free. over at Patreon. You guys are welcome to go and take a peek. We are at 5 minutes. All right, so tonight we are talking about the Mayapple. It's also called the American Mandrake, ground grape, I believe. The actual species name is Podophyllum species, but in particular we're going to be kind of focusing on just two of them today. We have Podophyllum hexandrum and Podophyllum peltatum. Now, if you guys can hold on just for a moment, there's one thing that I forgot to bring with me that's kind of vital for tonight's presentation. So just bear with me for like 1 minute. All right, so it was only like 30 seconds, but still, we needed these tonight because, okay, so one of the first things I want everybody to understand, and we're going to go over this next, is the disclaimer. Anybody have any questions? I'm so excited. All right, I think you're going to be surprised, Sarah. All right, can everybody still see it? All right, here we go. Let's go to the very next page. This is a disclaimer. I'm not saying in any way to ingest this herb. I'm not discussing how to use it as a tea, extract, or any other way, as this plant is considered to be highly toxic, which it is when it's used improperly. I'm not going to tell you how to properly use it. That is not my job tonight. There are pharmaceutical drugs currently made directly from Mayapple species, and they will be discussed in more detail later in the presentation. So later on here and a little bit further down, I think you're going to be rather surprised at what it is currently being used for. Now, when I say that these pharmaceutical drugs are being made from this plant, I mean they are literally taking extracts of this particular plant, and they're making pharmaceutical drugs out of it today. Today's day and age, they're currently being used. Let me get a drink of water. Hold on. All right. So, now that that's everybody understand that I'm not telling anybody to drink it, take it, ingest it, use it in any way, shape, or form. History of use. Now, this particular plant has been used it's been documented to have been used for at least hundreds of years. Native American peoples have used it. It's been used in Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine. Whenever you see me put TCM, that means traditional Chinese medicine, for those of you who don't know. So this particular plant is found all over the world. Now, the Podophyllum hexandrum is the one that's found here, I believe. And then the Podophyllum peltatum is the one that's called the Himalayan mayapple. So it's found in the Himalayan mountains over in Asia. And that's where they've used it. Now, it's interesting because a lot of these conditions, they work. They, as you can tell, that they're the same thing. Okay, so the history of use. Native American people, the first thing that they used it for was snake bites. Right, it was able to neutralize the poisons in the snakes. They used it for warts and wart removal, and they also used it for the removal of tumors. So that would be external tumors, bulges, anything like that that would be causing problems. Typically speaking, they even caught certain kinds of cancer back then as well. Now, coincidentally, in Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine, it was also used for snake bites, also used for tumors, weakness, so general weakness overall as a tonic, a body tonic to strengthen you. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say, screen is blurry. I don't know that I can make it any clearer. You guys got to understand I am limited on what I have. Until I get enough money to afford a better camera, let's see what I can do. Don't expect any miracles. That's the best I got. Sorry. I mean, I'm in a small room with a lot of bad lighting, so this is the best I can do. I have no way to adjust my screen. So the smaller, if you want to read the PowerPoint, just download it. It's available in the description there. You can just download it and then you can read along as you go, or you can just listen to me as we talk about it. So in Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine, it was also used for parasites. Now, what they would do with that, from what I was able to discover, is they would take the roots and make like a mead or an alcoholic beverage, beer, out of it, and then use the fermented beverage as the means to get rid of intestinal worms. Now, if you notice, that was back hundreds of years ago at the very least, so they were already back then still, not already, but they were using fermented foods to make the the products or the properties of the herbs come out better. So that's the history of how that, and they've been using it for a couple hundred years. Now, the reason why I had to stop and run back, because the very next part of this is going to be highly relevant, and I think you're going to be surprised. Now, if you're one of those people, if you're coming along later and you're not seeing this live, if you're one of those people who are like, oh my God, that's toxic. Yep, I'm very well aware. We've already discussed that. But here's something I think you're going to be surprised about. Ready? American medicine in the 1800s. It was actually considered a medicine. Now, that right there is an actual picture from this book, which is the Medica Materia, Pharmacy and Therapeutics from 1899. This was the doctor's handbook from 1899. And they discussed this particular plant in detail. They talked about it. It was actually used as a medicine. So what that says right there, that particular clip says, Podophyllum Mayapple is the rhizome and rootlets of Podophyllum peltatum. So peltatum is the one that's here in the United States. The mandrake. An herbaceous perennial of the order Burbacidae, growing in the woodlands of Canada and the U.S., having a pale green stem about a foot high with a single white flower at its summit. Its active principle is a resin, and if you're following along on our Herbal Medicine 101, you'll know. I think I've already posted resins. Maybe not. It's done. So if I haven't posted it yet, it'll be posted this week. Its active principle is a resin, which is official, and is a compound of several resins. It probably contains the alkaloid berberine, which is also found in berberis, hydrastis, and several other plants. Berberine, again, that has that antiviral, antibacterial, and pay very close attention to that antiviral part that I discussed, because later on in this video, you're going to understand where that's going to be really relevant. So what they had back then, I'm going to open it up and let you see. I know the lighting's bad. I really can't do anything about it. I will be seeing what I can do to get a better setup, figure out a way to box it in better. I don't know. We'll do something. There's the Podophyllum. You can see right there, Podophyllum, and they had quite a big part of what they did with it. This is what he said that they were all good for. They talked about the preparation, exactly how they extracted it back then and used it as a medicine. I'm not going to go into those details, but I can tell you, when they say that it's toxic, it sure is toxic, just like chemotherapy. And pay attention to that one too, and other types of therapy, because it's small in higher doses. But when they were measuring these out, they were measuring them out by the grain. It wasn't by the gram or by the ounce or anything like that. They were going by the grain. So they had to be very detailed in exactly how they were administering this as a medicine. Now, I'm not saying to use it as a medicine. I'm just stating that when they did it, they were very careful about it, and they didn't just throw a bunch of it at, here, drink a cup of tea. That they were very exact about it. And even though it was 120 years ago, they still knew enough to know that they were supposed to be pretty careful with how to use it. Now, now that that's mentioned, we also have the College Pharmacy Quiz Compense Pharmacy Handbook from the same guy who wrote one of the anatomy book, I believe. But they discussed it in there as well. They didn't go into as much detail, but they did discuss it. 156, Podophyllum. Right here. Oops, my finger's on it. Podophyllum. Talked about the species. They discussed a little bit about what it was good for. And they already identified some of the principal compounds. Now, this is 120 years ago. They already knew that it had podophyllin toxin, and a couple of other of the polyphenolic acid, and podophyllin. All of those compounds are used today in medicine, and we're going to get into that. Now, what they used it back then for, it was used as a purgative. So they would use it to help vomiting if you had issues vomiting, or for whatever reason. I'm not really a huge fan of vomiting, so maybe for poisoning. I don't find it to be very helpful in most cases. Constipation, they would use it for constipation because it gets in there and it does mess with your digestion a bit, especially if you take it in a little bit higher doses. Malarial jaundice. Now, when I went and looked it up, what they essentially meant was when you have malaria, it gave you jaundice. So they were using it as an antibacterial/antiviral to treat the malaria itself, though I don't think they realized it at the time, that those particular compounds. But they did know that when used medicinally, it did help with those conditions. There's another condition called catarrh, Catarrh. Now I had to look it up. I was like, what the hell is that? You know, because and it's going to be in my herb phrase book. You know, where you have particular conditions that, you know, situations like that, they need a definition. What I found out what it was is it's severe sinus congestion. I mean, to the point where it get into your sinuses, your ears, your eyes, everywhere, because that's all just like one big spot. It's all connected together. So when you get it in there, it would get, according back then, so it would get so bad that they could hardly breathe. And so they would use the American Mandrake as a means to break it all up. It broke up it worked as a decongestant, and it broke all that stuff up and got it out. It was also used for prolapsed rectum, fevers in children, and for liver issues. Now, as highly alkaloid as it is, I found it really interesting that it was able to help with liver issues, and I kind of went into it and did some research. Now that because the research kind of stopped in the 20s, at least from what I could find in regards to what it did for the liver, and they found other herbs and other compounds that worked better. So I mean, even though it might help back then, in today's time, there's better. You know, you have things like kudzu and milk thistle that works a lot better for your liver, rather than dealing with something like this. Something like this, which is so hold on, so sensitive. I mean, you have to measure it by the grain to make it poisonous or not. That, you know, it's just better to find other things that work. I'm just saying that this particular plant works for a lot of these things. Now, I did say that this was used up until about the 1900s commercially as a medicine. I mean, it was prescribed. A lot of people used it. It was used for lots of different conditions. It was very, you know, it was very prevalent. If you live in like the northeast part of the United States, you're probably seeing it everywhere right now. It's everywhere. I mean, I drive by fields now, and there's I see some of them that are a quarter acre of just mandrake right in the middle of a field. Normally, it likes to be in the woods, fairly covered. Doesn't necessarily care for like extensive sunlight, from what I understand. But these ones don't seem to mind at all, man. I mean, they are all over the field. So I mean, that's a dream. And they knew even back then that it had a lot of medicinal properties, and they were able to break down a lot of the toxins, or not toxins. Yeah, there are toxins. A lot of the toxins and a lot of the chemical compounds back then that we would be surprised to see today. Going to number 5. All right, so here's current science for Mayapple. Now, what I mean by science is, here's the current medicine that they use for the Mayapple. Now, that's the Mayapple flower, and we have some in the backyard. I was able to go out and get some pictures of it. Now, some of the current therapeutics that they use for or with Mayapple, these are pure Mayapple extracts. You have anti-wart creams, so they work to get rid of certain kinds of warts. So we're going to go into some detail. I am going to discuss the pharmaceuticals that goes along with that. They have anti-tumor cream. You know, they use it for external tumors, so it'd be like for melanoma and other types of tumors that are causing problems. It's supposed to work really well for that because they make pharmaceutical grade creams for it. It's used to treat certain cancers today, used today as an actual medication, prescribed by doctors, and even here in the United States. Most people don't realize where it comes from, right? I mean, it's a lot easier if you don't know where it comes from. Imagine it comes from a plant. Now, am I saying go in your backyard and do it? No, I'm not. Absolutely freaking not. But I am saying that, you know, a lot of this stuff is really, it's available. I mean, we've known it for thousands of years, you know, that it's a thing. So, you know, very, very frustrating from my perspective. It's also used to treat brain tumors. It gets past the blood-brain barrier, and it's one of those few herbs that breaks the blood-brain barrier and is able to get in and affect brain tumors themselves. It's known to stabilize human DNA. What do I mean by that? All right, so your DNA, imagine a ladder, okay? See this big ladder? Now take the ladder and twist it like a spiral. Well, there's your DNA. It's a double helix. It has two rails essentially connected by strands. Well, when you get certain kinds of cancer, or if certain things happen, you know, like radiation damage or something like that, those strands will separate. Your DNA will literally separate, and once it starts to separate, it will metastasize or mutate into something different, right? So if it's a cancer, it'll change it into something that is more suited for the cancer, and the cancer will continue to metastasize those cells and mutate your cells. They're mutating your cells and making your cells cancerous. This is known to help prevent that, and I'll show you why here in a minute. It's also known to reverse radiation damage. I don't mean like, you know, if what they did was, here's what I do mean. What I mean by that is they did some tests, and they gave lethal doses of radiation to humanized mice, and those mice, the mice that were treated with it they survived. Every one of them survived. The ones that were not treated, they all died exactly when they should have. And so, I mean, it's that potent of a plant. Now, there's something interesting stuff that are in the compounds in there, and when we get into some of these later things, I'm going to do what's called the side note. And when we get into the side note, you're going to be like, oh, wow, man, that's pretty impressive. And it's pretty interesting science. Now, what I am going to do is at the end in the description, so if you can come back to this later and look, and if you're looking at this after the live is over, I've most likely already entered all the links to that, but all the links to what I'm discussing, there's going to be a lot of them. I'm not going to put links to every single thing. I mean, at some point you're going to have to do your own research. But I did a lot of the research for you, so all you have to do is click and read, click and read, click and read, and you can go and see some of the actual research and the science that's behind this. This isn't just, Confucius say that this stuff works. This is like scientists saying we're using this on human people right now for this particular purpose. Pharmaceutical drugs made from Mayapple extract. Now they have what's called podophyllum cream. Now podophyllum is a compound that's found in the Mayapple, and it's used medicinally. It's toxic, right? Very, very toxic, but it works in particular for warts and viruses. Now, if most of you know that warts are a virus. Now, I only got a couple, but there's more of them. I only got pictures of a couple. This one here is called podophyllum, and it's just a cream for the treatment of warts, and that's what it says on the label. This one here is called Warticon, and it's also called, that Warticon is the brand name, and the actual compound is podophyllatoxin, and that's what they're using directly from the Mayapple to give to people, right? But they have a very specific amount, 0.15% of podophyllatoxin. You'd have to really know your herbs to get it down to 1.5% concentration of that particular. You'd have to know your exact measurements of the podophyllatoxin you have in the Mayapple you have. Now, what this particular cream is for is they use it for wart cream, so it works for topical warts, warts on your fingers and other parts of your body. It works for plantar warts, so if you have the more embedded ones that are just super painful, those are usually on your feet, and they're awful. It'll get rid of those too. And it works for corns, so it'll soften up the skin enough that you can get that skin down, whittle it down, and it's not so painful. It also works for genital and backside warts. It works for those as well. I gotta be careful on YouTube. It works for those warts as well. At least it's prescribed specifically by doctors for those particular conditions. And they have several different brands. Does anybody have any questions so far while we're here this far? Is everybody just so enraptured with what you're hearing that you don't have any questions? I'm answering everything very thoroughly. Because right now, if you have any question, now would be the time to ask it. I'll ask you the question and I can answer it and we can move on. Because we're only about 22 minutes in. So that gives us about another 40 minutes or so before the end of the show. And we're going to try to still keep these at about an hour. Anybody have any questions? Now's the time to ask, or we're going to go on to the next one. This is just a couple of them too. I think there was like 4 or 5 that they have, and they're just different name brands, but they're all using the same toxin. Okay. Hey Mitchell, good to see you. Hey Angie. All right, so we're just moving on to the next section. Next, these are the other pharmaceutical drugs made from Mayapple. This one here is a specific drug. It's called tinipicide. And you can see over here, it is available by prescription only. It's tinipicide injection. It's dilution required. Read enclosed package insert. This is the actual label for it. Cytotoxic agent stored under refrigeration. Protect from light. It's very, obviously, the chemical structure of it, it's very fragile. So what does tinipicide treat? What do they use it to treat? Well, it's been shown to help with lymphocytic leukemia, so bone cancer. It seems to work well for that. Hodgkin's lymphoma, certain types of brain tumors, and other types of cancers. So they use it, and it's been found to be pretty effective against all of those. It's prescribed worldwide. It's used here. Now they say that, from what I read, that it's just one particular part of a compound that comes from the Mayapple. Now, here's an interesting side note, and I have to be very careful with how I word this, and this is what I kind of teased you guys about earlier today. When it comes to these, interesting side note, tinipicide interacts with certain quote-unquote medications, including those things, like you give your kids, right, to get into school. Now this includes the flu, polio, and typhoid. things you give to kids to get into school. But it also seems to interfere directly with messenger RNA. Those two. Pretty neat, huh? Did you guys catch what I said? mRNA, it seems to work with the mRNA things too. And this is what they found scientifically. It interferes with those. It's specifically it's labeled specifically as counterindications for those particular things. So, and the counterindications was very telling. I was like, ooh, that's kind of interesting. And I figured that the people who watch these types of videos would be very interested in hearing that. The other, any questions on that one? Tenipicide? It's made directly, because I looked this up, and the links will be into that too. We good? Yep, the V word. We'll just use the V word. Thanks, Cindy. How's your knee? Your knee doing okay? Cindy had knee surgery a while back, so everybody knows. Throw your business out there. What do you think, Cindy? All right, next page. The other one they have is etoposide. And this is the reason why it says one is because there's 2 pages for this particular pharmaceutical. Etoposide. Now, what they're used for is lung cancer, small cell carcinoma, testicular cancers, and other types of cancers. And when I say other types of cancers, some of them they weren't necessarily labeled for use for that, but they were okay to use it off-label. If that makes sense, it should for most of you. The other interesting side note for this one is it has that same counterindication with the V words. So if people have been worried about how to go about counteracting those, well, I mean, I don't know. I have a book and over on my Patreon page, but certainly I'm not going to do it for free. It'll be over my Patreon page. Maybe I'll discuss how Dr. Potter went about processing his podophyllum. I'm not that I would do it, but I can show you the book. And you guys, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you know how to read. I'm pretty sure you do. But yeah, so they use that particular compound from Mayapple, and it works specifically for those particular types of cancers. Now it's a different set of compounds than the one that comes from the last one. So it's a different set of chemical compounds than the one that comes from tenipicide. But it does have, if you notice, they both work on cancer, but they also both seem to work on viruses too. So they're antiviral in nature, a powerful antiviral too. If they're able to affect an mRNA V word, then they should, I mean, maybe more needs to be done about that. Maybe if there's a doctor watching or somebody sends this to a doctor, you could look at that. I kind of think it would, and I don't know. I can't say yes or no, but if you, here's what I want you to do. Let me finish out what I'm going through with this presentation. Stick around, Wendy. Stick around and listen to what I'm going to say. Again, it's all back to science, and then you can make that determination. It kind of seems like it does a lot of things that a plant wouldn't normally do, if that makes sense. So the second part of this. Pharmaceutical drugs made from Mayapple, and you can do a search for this, etoposide. Etoposide part 2. It stabilizes human DNA. And if you don't believe me, you can do on your computer search right now and type, does etoposide stabilize human DNA? And it'll come up with a big fat yes. Poof, yes. Yes, it does. So it stabilizes human DNA. It stabilizes the double strand of the human DNA. And it prevents cell mutation. So it prevents other cells or other types of compounds from interfering with your DNA. So if your DNA is healthy, it'll keep it healthy. And if it has healthy DNA to work with, it can actually strengthen the DNA that it does have to work with to make it more healthy too. That makes sense? Pretty sure it does. You guys are pretty smart. All right. One of the coolest things that I love about this plant is it reverses radiation damage. And I've read several studies, and I'm going to tell you the story because I love it. I love it. But and it gives us more time. But and this is from PubMed, and you can find it on other platforms, Hindawi, Science Direct. There's a lot of other ones out there that produce these types of studies, and you can certainly read them all, and I'll tell you the same thing. It reverses radiation damage. So if you've been, or in animals that have been exposed to high lethal doses of radiation, they were able to survive that lethal dose of radiation, even though everything else, the ones that didn't get any treatment at all died. the ones that were treated, they were able to survive. And what it does is it stabilizes your DNA, it reverses the radiation damage, it prevents the cell mutation, just like it would if it were a cancer attacking your body. They've also discovered that this helps to alleviate the symptoms when they're using chemotherapy. It's considered a chemotherapy in and of itself. So those two other medications that I talked about before, they're considered chemotherapy. They are part of that process, but they have made it to such a way that it affects the cancer a lot worse than it affects the humans, because it tends to, if it's not given too strong, it'll protect the human DNA while simultaneously adversely affecting the cancer cells, causing cell apoptosis and structured cell death. It's pretty efficient, and they've known it for a long time. So what that particular title says, and I'll be posting the link to that particular study so you guys can go read it yourself. But Podophyllum hexandrum, Himalayan Mayapple extract provides radioprotection by modulating the expression of proteins associated with apoptosis. So when you get radiation damage, it'll cause cell apoptosis. So your own cells will start dying, your structured cell death of human healthy cells, rather than the structured cell death of cancer cells. So what this does is it actually protects it. Now, I don't understand how the process works, but I do know that it works, and then they've studied it extensively. The one that I like the most, this is the one that really got my attention in this particular plant. And for those of you most of you guys probably already follow me, you probably already heard this ad nauseum, but it's pretty impressive. They took 36 mice, humanized mice, and yes, I said humanized mice, and you can go through my timeline if you're just following along to see the humanized mouse video that I did. Go into a little bit more detail about what a humanized mouse is. Well, essentially what it is a mouse that has a ton of human DNA in it. So different parts of its body have, different parts of its organs are mainly human. I mean, they're mostly human. And when it's been tested, either with chemicals or radiation, it's going to react as a human cell would act. Okay. So what they did was they gave 36 mice lethal doses of radiation. They all the same lethal dose. And they split them up into 4 groups of 9. And they took the first group of 9 just left aside, and I think after 3 days they died because they'd gotten too much of the poison. The next group they treated just before they gave the lethal dose. So they took 9 aside and they gave them treatment prior to being dosed with the radiation. The next group they gave immediately after, so within like a couple of minutes of being exposed, they were given their dose. And then the last group I think they waited a day or two. It's been a while since I've actually read the study, but they waited, and they came along and they gave them their doses, and then they continued the treatment for the entire month. At the end of 30 days, they took the mice and they gave them all autopsies, and they figured out what was wrong with them. And what they discovered was that all the mice, every one of them, all 27 that had gone through the procedure, all of their body functions were back to near normal levels, every single one of them. So this particular plant that they had given, the extract had protected the mice DNA. Not only had it protected them, but even the ones that had waited and the radiation was already starting to cause the damage on the body, those ones that reversed the damage and repaired what was done to them, and they survived. Humanized mice. Yeah, it is pretty disturbing. Okay, so Wendy says, humanized mice, Frankenstein medicine. That's pretty gross. They've been doing it for a long time. You can actually look and see videos, and they have Worcester rats, which are all they're essentially clones. I mean, they say they're not clones, but they're so identical on their DNA level that they're interchangeable. I mean, you can't really tell them apart, and they all react exactly the same way. They have no immune system. They're built specifically to be tested. That's it. I mean, they were manufactured. They're manufactured mice, and they're stripped of an immune system. They're given all sorts of human DNA that's laced into their bodies, and then when they're tested as if they work for humans, which is why the latest round of the V word, not the latest round, but it was like maybe the time before, they only tested on 8 mice. Tested on 8 mice, and it was approved for human use. And then you can fact check that. It's been fact checked by many sources, especially sources on the left. They're like, oh, no, that's not right. And then they look at it and like, crap, that's right. That's exactly what they did. So how they lessened it was, well, the reason why they only used 8 mice was because how'd they put it? They already knew, they only changed one part of the V word, and they already knew what it would do the other parts. So they were just checking to see if just changing that one part had any adverse effects. That was their excuse for it. And you can go through and read it. It's out there. A bunch of people tried to fact check that. They found they got shot down really quick. So, and of course, right now that's a little bit more lenient too in regards to what you can discuss. But I'd rather not take any chances. I'm working really hard to build this audience, and I can't have them, randomly giving me violations because I said the wrong word or something. Um, so they took this stuff. And again, this stuff's everywhere. If you live in the Northeast, you can see it everywhere. They found that it can affect the body down on the molecular level. Pretty neat for a plant. And so the names of it has different names. You have Mayapple, American Mandrake, Wild Mandrake, Podophyllum peltatum, Podophyllum hexandrum, ground grape, I think is another word that they call it. But yeah, all in all, it's a pretty impressive plant. I figured that presentation would take a little bit longer. It took a really long time to do. We're at 35 minutes. What else would you like to discuss? Because there's no more slides. That's slide 11 of 11. I mean, we could always cut it short early too, I suppose. Next week we're going to talk about mistletoe. Let's talk about mistletoe. Why do I want to talk about mistletoe? Well, what did you miss? Well, I guess it'd be better to tell me, what did you hear? What did you hear that it does? And then I can give you a Cliff Notes version of all the other goodies. You just heard about the radiation protection? I'm going to assume. You have to go back and watch the beginning, Alan. I specifically said I did a disclaimer stating that I won't tell anybody how to use it. However, excuse me. Here's what I am going to do. I am over on Patreon. This is for all patrons, not just no specific tiers, but all patrons. I'm going to go through on my Patreon page. It's only $1 a month. Come on. I'm going to go through and with the Medica Materia. This is the book that they used back then. I'm going to go through and discuss how they prepared it in those days back then and the dosages they used. But I'm not going to tell you to use it. I'm just simply pointing out the science to it. Now that's over on my Patreon page, the Herb Guy. If anybody would like to put that in the comments, maybe Sarah or Ben or somebody, I would really much appreciate it. I just got here 10 minutes ago. No worries. I can give you the Cliff Notes version. Okay, so here's what this thing does. We'll go through it really fast. I mean, we're all here anyway. I'm not going to go through all the detailed stuff. Yes, I know. Okay, so it's been used for hundreds of years. Native American people used it, Ayurvedic and Indian and Chinese people also used it. But strangely enough, the uses coincided. Now, if you want this particular PowerPoint presentation, it's available on my Patreon page for free. This particular presentation will be the breakdown of the podophyllum. That's going to be for patrons only. So for those of you who are patrons and you want to know how they broke this plant down, I have some mandrake in the backyard. I might just go out there and pick some and then do pictures and show pictures as he did it and do it the same way he did it. What do you guys think of that? Would that be something you'd be wanting to see? And then that would give you a better idea of how they went about doing it. So Native American people and the Indian and traditional Chinese medicine. So the Indian and Chinese people used it hundreds of years ago. They both used it for snake bites and warts, or snake bites and tumors, right? They both had it. And then Native American people used it for warts, and in India and China they used it for weakness and parasites, intestinal worms in particular. The next thing they did is American medicine. It was used as an actual medicine for a very long time here in the United States, up until about the 1920s is when they really stopped using it. It was used as a purgative, so it helped you vomit, helped for constipation, treated malaria, catarrh, prolapse rectum, fevers in children, liver issues. It was really quite versatile. Current science for Mayapple, what I mean by current science is particular what they're using it for currently. Today, it's being used for anti-wart creams, anti-tumor creams, to treat certain kinds of cancer, brain tumors, it stabilizes human DNA. They make different various pharmaceutical drugs specifically from that plant. So you have tinipicide, you have podophyllum cream, but it's podophyllum, tinipicide, etopicide, reverses radiation damage, and that's not At least as far as I know, it's not a pharmaceutical drug, but you would think if somebody's receiving radiation treatments for their cancer, crap, if it kills cancer, wouldn't it reverse I mean, logic dictates to me that it would reverse the damage that you get from the radiation, and it would also kill the cancer too, right? I mean, doesn't logic dictate that to you? From everything you've heard, from everything we've read, from everything we've discussed tonight, wouldn't logic dictate that if somebody goes through radiation treatment for their cancer, and then they were to take this, it would help, potentially help, with both the radiation damage that you would get and the cancer itself? Doesn't that logic like that? I guess we're gonna have to find out on Patreon, Sarah. Sarah's question is, I guess, how would we process it for the most accurate administration? Well, I don't know. I'm gonna do it the way that they did it in 1899. This is the way the doctors and pharmaceuticals, and pharmacies, and therapeutists did it back then. This was the official book of the day. Materia Medica, Pharmacy, and Therapeutics. I'm going to take it straight out of the book, but it's only going to be on my Patreon page. So if you guys want to see it, I'll take pictures of the page itself. Sarah, you already have this book. You have this. I would be willing to bet you have Podophyllum in there to be about halfway in the book. Probably around page 420 or so. Between 420 and 430, I would say. And it'll have all that same information that you just saw. Well, of course, okay, so Angie's thing, you would think, but does Big Pharma want that? It's like, no, of course they don't. I mean, no. No, they make too much money on their stuff. Yeah, I mean, I suppose what we could do for the live, we have the live, we have 19 minutes. If you really want, we can close up shop right here, right now, and then go out in the back if you guys really want to see these things in the wild. And we can kind of have a little chat, but I won't probably be able to see. Is that something anybody would really want to do on a live? You only have 18 minutes to decide. Just find out. Yes. Then you can also see the bee box. I have my bee set up. All right, so we're gonna go out. Everybody, it's a general consensus. So if you're following along later and you're not on a live, we're only gonna be doing this for about 15 more minutes. So I'm gonna hurry up, get this thing disconnected. I'm gonna have to. It's probably gonna jump for a second because I'm gonna have to turn off my Wi-Fi. Hang on. But we should still stay live. Hold on. I don't have anything to add to this, Alan. So, I mean, realistically, it kind of makes sense. We can just do a field trip. Do a field trip in the middle of a live. It'll be fine. What's the worst that'll happen if people stop watching right now at 42 minutes? If they stop at 43 minutes, still 3/4 of the way through. I'm down. All right. Oh. Let's get I get to go outside. Are you ready? I will try to keep Oh, there's a chipmunk. I will try to keep the camera as steady as possible so nobody gets nauseous. Amy just mowed. It's really awesome. Chickens are out. They are back in the woods. The goats are out too. It's kind of nice. They've been tending the fence today. There's the chickens. There's my moosey moose. Come on, guys. Come on, moose. Let's go check it out. There's Soul. And Opal, the escape artist, is still around. There's Opal. That's one of the most domesticated chickens I've ever seen. If you're sitting and eating, like at the picnic table, she will jump up at the picnic table and join you. Like she belongs there. Alright. Perfect. Here we go. There they are. And it's the root that's used. There's the flowers. All of those. They're all back in there. See if I can get a good picture of the flower. And sometimes they'll have two leaves, but they generally only have one flower. There's the flower. They tend to like damp or moist ground. They will grow right with that insidious little beast right there. Poison ivy, for those of you who are unaware. As you can tell, I mean, they'll grow a big patch. So if you were to harvest something like this, you don't take it all. You only take like half. And there's your roots. I mean, as you can tell, they stretch a ways. So you'd want to dig like a section. Dig like that. And then pull, rinse everything off, and then you would cut everything off from here down. And then there's your roots. So we have plenty of this back here. I'm going to go ahead. I'll go ahead and harvest some. And I'll make a small batch, and I'll do it the way they did it in that book. Spider web in the mouth. Trying to find the next patch. All of ours around here seem to like me. We don't, well, of course we also mow the yard, but we don't normally see a lot, like right in the wide open. But when I'm on my way to work and I see some of the farm fields, there's a couple farmers that haven't plowed their fields this year, and there's patches of them that are like a half acre patch of those. That's a lot of mayapple. Oh, sorry. All right, here's some others. I might take some of these instead. See, those are nice ones. See nice how big those are. And they're closer to the fence. That's what we have. Anybody have any questions? I have a bee box, but I did not catch any bees yet. We lost a hive, unfortunately. So, next week we're going to talk about mistletoe. Some of the misconceptions about mistletoe. Most people assume that it's poisonous, and, you know, of course, just like anything else, if used improperly, it certainly is. My wild bee trap I have up in the tree. Everything should save. The comment should save. So I'll have to go back and watch this too. So that's a wild honeybee trap. So in theory, I've already got pheromones on there and stuff. So in theory, I should be able to catch another wild hive. My hive from last year split already. So they split, and I tried to catch them, and I missed them. Hang it. So next year I'll be better prepared. I'll be in a much better situation next year too. So okay, so back on topic. Next year we will be discussing, or next week we'll be discussing mistletoe, the benefits of mistletoe. Mistletoe has a lot of the same protective properties as mandrake, surprisingly, and it's used. It's, you know, a little bit of a teaser for what you don't know. It's toxic, yes, but the #1 anti-cancer drug in Germany is mistletoe extract. I mean, in some cases, it's used exclusively over and above other medications. So it's very powerful. It's very potent. It also has the ability to stabilize your DNA. So that's going to be something else we're going to talk about too. So there's a little teaser. I have a horizontal hive that I made. If you're a beekeeper, Alan, maybe we should talk, because I have a horizontal hive that I made. It is doing very well. That's the hive that split this year on me. And there's over 100 pounds of honey in it that I have zero access to, because they went and cross-framed me. So if you have an idea of how to go about uncross-framing my hive, I can't do it right now because if it starts to rain, blah, blah, blah. From what I understand, I'm going to have to dismantle the whole thing. So I really don't want to lose the queen. I've been working really hard on that. The benefits of stabilizing, well, okay, so typically speaking, when you get sick, so if you get sick with a virus, Sarah's question is, what would be the benefits of stabilizing your DNA? Anytime you get sick, so if you're sick with a virus or a cold or a cancer, anything like that, when they attach to your cells, they change your cell structure. They change your cell structure to match theirs. which is how they're able to replicate. They use your cells to do that. It's a lot more complicated than that. That's just the most basic way to put that. So what those types of herbs can do is they stabilize your DNA. So when these things go and try to mutate your cells, they're unable to, right? Because your DNA has already been stabilized with the chemical compounds that are in whatever herbs they are. And everything is buttoned up that way. So you're protected by the plant. There's Soul. Soul's a really nice dog to like 2 people. Other than that, he's not so nice. And he keeps biting the baby goat. And both of the dogs are completely starved for attention, so they think. So you can't pet one without petting the other. It's a mess. So there was the Mayapple. I'm going to go ahead and I'll probably harvest some this week. There's some other places I can go to get some, and I will make an extract and show everybody how the extract is made via Patreon. So I have some other products that I want to talk about this week too. So I'll try to stay on topic. I got a lot of big things coming up, a lot of changes, so you guys can stay tuned for those too. What time is it? It is 51. So we're going to close it out just a little bit early. I'm so glad everybody made it tonight. We had quite a few people that popped in. We don't get as many people here on YouTube as we do on TikTok, but you know, TikTok is not very herb friendly, so I have to be very careful. My friend Deadeye, he seems to do a lot better, but he's not touched on anything controversial as of yet, I don't think. So hopefully he'll be okay on that, and they won't start to do the same thing they did to me. But we will discuss next week will be mistletoe. Throughout the week, I have New Hampshire coming up. New Hampshire is almost done. Obviously, you guys on Patreon will get it first, and I'm going to probably go back to the old format. It's just a lot easier for me to do it that way. The victory thing is all fun and good, and you know, blah blah blah. But I think it's just better for bigger videos. For my states videos, it's gonna go back to the old format. We're gonna go there. And for those of you who've missed it, you can go down my timeline here on YouTube. I have my top 3 herbs from each state. It's a video playlist, and I got way further in than I am here on YouTube, but I can't upload them all at once, otherwise nobody will see them. So if you guys would go back through and you want to see those, you're welcome to go see those. I've talked about 3 herbs from each state. At the end of that series, I'm turning it into a book. So it'll be the Herb Guys 150 book herb book. Yeah, we've already named it on Patreon. I just can't remember what the name is. But yeah, that's kind of the benefits of being a patron too, is you get to actually help name things and have an active role in how everything progresses. So for those of you who've been following along, remember, I have some things going on for the next few weeks. I'm not going to be able to do the personal profile, you know, talk about those, but we will definitely, each one of you gets a free consultation. For the $3 patrons, you get a free consultation after 3 months. For a $2 consultation, or for $2 patron, you get a free consultation after 6 months, and for a $1, you get a free consultation after a year. So that's essentially, after you hit the $12 mark, you get one for kind of half off. I don't really do them too much anymore. It's going to be like patron specific, but you get a consultation with me where we're going to go over any concerns you might have. I don't give advice, but I can give suggestions on things to research and better ways to do things. But that comes with being a patron as well. So if like you, Sarah, Derek, all you guys, you guys get a hold of me. Right now I got a lot of kind of big stuff going on, but just give me until the end of next month, and things should kind of settle down a bit, and we'll be better able to get some of those things taken care of. But until then, I appreciate everybody's patience, and we still made it almost to the hour mark. If you miss anything, go back through and watch the video. I was pretty thorough in regards to Mayapple and the benefits of it. And if you guys have any questions, I will try to make sure to get all the links and everything in here, so you can go down through the description and go read that science too. But I appreciate everybody who followed along. Thanks for watching.